Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. And given that today is Talk Like a Pirate Day, today or tomorrow, I can't really seem to get it straight on whether it's the 19th of September or the 20th. I thought I would once again delve into the well of the 2004 remake of Sid Meier's Pirates and talk about it. Even though I've already given, I've already made a review of it, I've already made a gameplay video of it, but still there are, but still there are things about this video game that I want to talk about. More specifically, I want to look through the facets of the game that make it interesting, and rank them in accordance to what exactly it is about, and that makes them interesting. So you can think of this as being supplemental to my review of the game, where I talk a little bit more in depth about about the various facets of the game. That one was that video was more spoiler free. This one is seems me go a little bit a little bit deeper, a little bit further into the actual into actual spoilerish territory. With a look at every facet of Sid Meier's Pirates 2004 ranked where's the best. That being said, there are certain facets that I'll be coalescing together because because they are sufficiently similar that differentiating them might not make sense. Also, this is not going to be a numbered list. This is just going to be I'm just going to be starting with the worst, and then the further along we go, just know that that it becomes that much better as we go. So, with that out of the way, it's time we actually get into the video itself. Starting with the story. And yes, I very particularly chose this this image where you have someone writing with a feather from an ink quill. And the reason I picked the story last is because because of all the things that make up this game, it really is it really is the one that is the least involving. Like you could seriously just skip over it, skip over almost every part of it, and still get uh, and still get a very decent, experience of playing, Sid Meier's Pirates, figuring out, of learning what it's like to be, of delving into the world of piracy that this game allows. It is really only relevant in terms of the completion of the game. But even if you ignore the central the central narrative conceit of the game completely, you can still get the best ending, so to speak. Um, and also the and so yeah, on the one hand it is so yeah, on the one hand this so on one hand it is quite so on one hand it doesn't really add to the story, add to the gameplay experience, the story, but on the other hand the story itself is also quite undercooked, and especially in higher difficulties it just leads to more busy work if you want to complete it. So for that reason, I'm putting the story of the game as dead last. Next up, sneaking. Yeah. My voice is a little rough, even though this is only the second video I'm filming today. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. The second worst part of this game is the sneaking mechanic, because yes, you can actually sneak around. This game actually features four for countries that work as factions within the game. Though I could argue there are several other factions. I could argue the the pirates, the natives, and the uh, clergy also functions as also function as factions, even though they don't really get, even though they, even though working with them doesn't really work towards, or doesn't really contribute towards completion. But anyway, aside from that, there are but tossing them aside, from a gameplay mechanics perspective and progression perspective, there are basically four factions, and it is possible to get to have one of these factions sufficiently mad at you that you are not allowed in their city. So you have the in their city. So you have the opportunity to sneak around. And unfortunately, the sneaking around mechanics are just bad. Like there's no other way of saying that they're just they're just bad. They're slow. There's a lot of they're slow. They're lethargic. They're not responsive. They're not snappy, and really that goes against the main strengths of the game, which are of the gameplay, which are revolve around how smooth it is and how how effectively the game itself responds to you, and how you can and how you can work within it. So so yeah, it would be much more rewarding to get into basically a sea battle where you have to where you would have to besiege the city rather than having to sneak in. But yeah, but as it stands, however, as it stands, you kind of have to do you kind of have to do this this very poor uh, approximation of stealth. Now, I'm not expecting. I wouldn't have expected it to be like like Assassin's Creed, which was which the first game, the first of which would of which the first game would come out like 3 years later. But still, I would have wanted perhaps a little bit more fluidity in with maybe taking some degree of light and shadow into account. Because I really think the hardware at the time would have at least allowed for that. But unfortunately, it's just very slow and very uh, ugh. It's very slow and very unresponsive, and really takes away what makes the game good. So for that reason, uh, the sneaking mechanics or the stealth mechanics of this game land right about here. Next up is escort missions, and I am grouping a lot of things here under escort missions. First of which is this kind of thing where you're tasked by the clergy to deliver refugees to colonies, um, to colonies, but you also have stuff like you also have stuff like escorting escorting officials to a to any particular city where they are appointed governor, or it could be escorting various ships that carry either war ultimatums or peace treaties, it's etc., etc. And the thing is, and what they say about escort missions, that you kind of have, that you constantly have to adjust to a pace that to the pace of the NPC, which is a pace that you're not particularly you yourself are not particularly capable of following. But also, it kind of takes away from the freedom of exploration that you would otherwise have, of being able to seek out uh, the various opportunities and actions and missions that you would otherwise be capable of delving into. Thankfully, there don't seem to be any penalties for missing that, except for the penalties that you incur for, except for what happens when if you were to not take it, which means that some level of your progression, uh, which means that you don't really get to do any do the progression that you would have gotten otherwise. So, but even then, the thing that makes escort missions interesting is what it is what it is that they allow, rather than rather than anything about anything about the ways in which they work that make them that make them um, that make them exciting to delve into. So for that reason, that is where escort missions land. Next up, we have, oh yeah, treasure. By the way, while most of these pictures are from the, are of the PC port of this game, I'm pretty sure at least a few. I'm pretty sure there are two that come from the, that come from the Wii port of the game, and I'm pretty sure this is one of those two. And yeah, treasure, and yeah, finding treasure is basically one of those staple. Sorry about that. Uh, Finding treasure is basically one of those staple features of of the pirate adventure fantasy, and it is about discovering. And it is about discovering. It is about immersing oneself into into a world, and into the world in that sense, and finding finding a finding a map, and then finding a map, and then and then using your insight, using the clues to to uncover where it is. It's an interesting facet overall, one that yields some level of reward, though arguably though arguably not enough to really to really make it interesting. And uh, Uh, and it adds another layer of depth and complexity to the exploration mechanics of the game, because you're not exploring the seas, you're also exploring the the land, the islands as well. There isn't really a lot of there isn't really a lot of mechanical depth to it, but there is sufficient, but I would argue there is and there is plenty of mechanical reward, I would argue. Even the even though some even though some maps are a bit are not are not exactly accurate. Anyway, it is an it is an interesting part. It is an interesting part of the story of the, or not of the story of the game, and it is one that I think, and it is one that I think works at least somewhat well within the within the context of the within the context of the world. So that is why finding treasure lands here. Next up, we have we have a town, a or rather a city from a model of a city from the game under daylight. There aren't really any regular gameplay conditions where you can find an image like this, but but it doesn't really matter. I am using this image in particular to talk about a lot of the unseen examples of this game. Some of the more active demographics and economics mechanics that are that are intrinsic to the game, such as why certain cities are called ports, outposts, and capitals, or why they are called prosperous, or prosperous, poor, or anything in between. There is a level of depth that is given to it, and there is quite a bit of action that goes into action and decision making that goes into the that goes into what exactly the NPCs are doing. There is a level of dynamics that the that the player doesn't interact with, that shapes the world. And while that makes it more interesting to uphold, it also adds. I could also argue that it adds a layer of frustration, because it is not something that the players can directly the players can directly influence. There is some way in which it can though there is some way in which it can be seen to uh, there is some level of interaction the player actually has when meeting with governors of various provinces. But even then, it's just kind of a hint. It's interesting to observe, and it does help make the game at least a little bit at least a little bit more immersive to know that things are going on when you're not looking. But the fact that there are but the fact that there are limited avenues of influence uh, uh, over the game, uh, over those facets of the game, make it can also lead to it becoming a source of a source of frustration, or the or the assumption that the you know uh, that RNGesus simply isn't working in your favor. So uh, so it's interesting, but it's not too compelling. So for that reason, that facet of the game makes it here. Next up, the market system, or rather simply the trading system, where you are capable of because as a pirate, you obviously collect you obviously rob ships, collect various items off of them, and then these items you can sell at and then these items you can sell at various markets in the cities where you land. And all of these typically have some level of these have often different prices for for different goods. That in some way contributes to the to the to the dynamic economy that the game has, which comes from the previous aspect of the unseen facets of this game. And I have to say, it is quite fun to play. It is fun, it's fun to speculate and to um, and to uh, and to supplement your income in that particular fashion. Though it can lead to some level of frustration when when there are when there are wares in your warehouses that you want to sell, but that the merchant can no longer buy off you because you've because they only have so much money. It is, and regardless, it is at the fact the existence of an in-game market very much feels very refreshing, especially in today's gaming landscape where everything is like microtransactions and battle passes and so on. You don't need me to tell them about it. And while they aren't really particularly mechanically complex, but they are satisfying. Yet occasionally they still run into various issues. So sorry about that. So while interesting, they don't. While interesting, they aren't really a center point. Next up, we have crew recruitment, or really any kind of, uh, gameplay aspect that revolves around one tap of a button. Typically a yes or a no. That can also mean accepting a duel. That can also mean accepting information. That can also mean taking in unique items, etc. Um, it is still uh, it does help make the game a little bit more snappy. It helps make the game a little bit more fluid, more interesting to more interesting to interact with. And even though they're short, and I would argue in fact that the briefness, the brevity of the interaction makes it you know makes it more worthwhile. You can also recruit crew from defeated crew, because there are because there are some points, especially if your crew is sufficiently small, where there will be where certain people from the capture crew will volunteer to join yours. uh, but and also there and also it and also various crews have and also there are specialists that that you could bring to your crew, such as a Cooper, or a medic, or a sailwright, someone who can fix your sails during while you're navigating, etc. So it's but still, it's basically it's basically one tap. There isn't really there isn't particular there isn't really a particular depth to the system in itself, but it does open up additional depth, which I do have to say I find interesting to delve in, which allows for this game to be more interesting to delve into. So even though it's not the most glamorous thing in the world, its existence allows for broader things to to be made possible. So for that reason, it makes it up here. Next up, we have navigation. Like the simple baseline navigation of going from place to place, within this pirate simulation. This is really the um, when it came time to designing this list, this is the second hardest thing to place on this on this entire list, because while it works, while it is smooth, and while it does help with the impression I get from this from this the impressions I get from this video game, and from my enjoyment of it, it can nevertheless still come across as monotonous, with the ship itself often having or with the sea itself often having little visual texture. As in, there are some there is some weight around it to showcase like the waves that are made from it. There are also places where the water kind of lightens up as as it gets more shallow. But beyond that, the sea itself is very is not really dynamic. It's quite unresponsive. It's almost like a with very with small exceptions, it is basically a sheet of blue. So in that sense, the actual navigation of this pirate game is somewhat uninteresting. Is at least somewhat uninteresting, while it can be smooth. And I will add that additional difficulty levels do make it do make it harder. Do add more interesting things to do add do add more things to take into account. But they do mean that does mean that you have to get more involved with the game. And in that sense, I would argue that it is well executed difficulty. But aside from that, I do have to say that the various ships themselves also also have meaningful differences in the ways they in the ways they behave while navigating, which in turn makes them which in turn adds a little bit more satisfaction when you're when you're going through when you're using them, and when you're experimenting with them. That and that I have to say gives you a lot of potential new baselines with which to work, and therefore adds plenty of and therefore makes navigation a deceptively complex system within this uh, within this game. One that in hindsight is perhaps not necessarily more enjoyable, but it is more compelling and more realized than I actually assumed. So for that reason, it makes it up here. I'm pretty sure we're already in the first half. Next up, we have the dancing mechanic, the most controversial aspect of this game, and really the thing that that I had the most difficulty trying to place, because especially if you go on the Reddit subpage of this game, you will find that a lot of people are complaining about the dancing mechanic because they find that the dancing mini games always take too long. The sequences are always too unpredictable. I can't necessarily say I have that. I have that same level of experience. In fact, quite the contrary. I won't say that they are always enjoyable, but they do represent a captivating break from the action that you are otherwise involved with, and they allow for for an interesting exploration into the potential into the mechanics of the game, and in the ways in which it can evolve. It is very much a rhythm mini game, so to speak, where you have to where you have to do timed prompts, uh, and it for the most part works and it for the most part works quite well. Though I do have to say the difficulty, a lot of the difficulty of this game really does still stem from the fact that it takes a little bit, a little bit too long, and you know, I I do have to admit there is, the gameplay sequences themselves being a little bit too long does actually present a problem, and also, I would argue that the rewards that one gets aren't really don't really justify the amount, don't really justify the time that is being spent, the time that's being spent with the game, or rather with this part of the game. Oftentimes, you're better off doing something else with with this sequence. But in and of itself, it is still fine to it's still fine to delve into, and it does still offer, uh, does still offer some level of enjoyment. It does still offer its own degree towards towards the progression, and it also opens up some quests, some avenues to delve into. So for that reason, the dance sequence actually makes it surprisingly high in this countdown. Next up, we have the actual world building / world presentation. And that which also includes designs. You've been able to see some of the designs, and I have to say, your mileage may vary on this, but I think they still hold up. I think there is still plenty of artistry that flows into creating this that has flowed into creating this particular game, and and in the way it's a visual standout. But I particularly want to talk about how the land masses are effectively rendered, and about what it and about how it actually presents the Caribbean of the time. Here, I also want to include the in-game encyclopedia, or Piratopedia, as it's called, which also has plenty of descriptions about basically every aspect of the game. And so, if you're basically so very much if you're the kind of and so if you're a very specific kind of nerd, you are going to spend hours just delving through that, looking into what the various ships are called, what what their specific attributes are, organizing them depending on how exactly you want your own personal fleet to what do you want your personal fleet to look like, if you're the kind of player who wants to gather a person who wants to gather a personal fleet, because because that's not necessarily everyone. And the game very does very much still cater to does still very much cater to that. There is plenty of immersion, and there is plenty of presentation, plenty of care brought into the brought into not just presenting the setting, but also in intellectualizing it, into giving people something to something to play around with. Remember how I said earlier about how the game has mechanics for demographics and economy? Well, this is another aspect that is more unseen during gameplay, but but that still has a but it still has a sizable impact because it allows to it allows to delve into the setting and into what it is, and allows it and that allows one to delve into the the world itself. It's perhaps not realistic, but the important thing is that it is immersive and it is responsive in a way I can't help but admire. And for that reason, it actually is the gateway to the top three. Because, yeah, as to perhaps no one's surprise, there is actually there's actually a top three. And if I count it correctly, there have actually been 10 things so far. So, so you can, so this thing is has a, so this aspect of the game has a number four. Maybe I'll. I said I wouldn't number these, but I guess to some extent I did. Oh well. Anyway, moving up. The bronze medal for, when it comes to the best parts of this game goes to land battles. Yeah, you have as a pirate, you have the opportunity to also rob cities. However, and because each city also has its own garrison. If the garrison is under is under 100 people, is or has less than 100 people, then then the gameplay for that is basically just a one-on-one duel with the with the captain of the garrison. But if the garrison itself is bigger, then you get into this. You get into a land battle between your crew and the garrison of the city. And it is a land battle where you have to arrange your troops in such a way that their strengths can be effectively employed, their weaknesses can be effectively covered, while also making sure that you nullify the advantages of the defenders and exploit their weaknesses. And unlike some aspects of the game that I've presented so far, this is actually one thing that becomes more interesting at higher difficulties, because because both you and the enemies have somewhat deeper sandboxes or somewhat broader sandboxes, and therefore you have more things to consider, more things that you have to strategize around, more things to become more involved in and involved with. It is and it is for that reason a very interesting and very rewarding thing to rewarding thing to dig into. And it is something that I find very much that I find is very much worth it. It is it can be it can be complex, and and there are certain risks because you are both you and the game are very much working with approximations. So, however, you may not approximate things the same way the game does. So therefore, an engagement that you think ought to be a victory ends up not being that. But still, it is a very rewarding system to involve oneself in. And for that reason, it basically gains the bronze medal of this impromptu ranking. The silver medal and the second best thing in this game is dueling. More specifically ship-to-ship dueling, which is basically the specifically ship dueling, which is what you'll do most of. Namely, you'll be bored. Namely, if you, the player character here, board the enemy ship, then its respective captain will challenge you to a duel. There is also an advantage system that is based off of that's based to some extent on crew size. But beyond that, it is basically timed prompts where where you have to effectively respond to whatever to the movements of the enemy. It is to that extent somewhat similar to the dancing minigame where you have to respond to the movement of the to the movements of your partner. But it is in many ways, but it is snappier, and I argue more rewarding, more satisfying. It, not to mention it flows, flows quite freely, and and the fact that it is, at least mechanically a little bit simpler, makes it easier to, makes it easier to master, easier to immerse oneself into. And this is another aspect of the game where higher difficulties add a higher degree of immersion of grid to them through the fact that at the lowest difficulty you're basically always fighting with a longsword. At higher difficulties, you can also choose whether you want to fight with a rapier or a cutlass. So and these swords all have their own respective strengths and weaknesses. I would argue that the dueling system is therefore not particularly well developed, because if one considers stuff like what more modern fencing based games could do. But when you consider uh, the mechanics that would have been available at the time and within this broader system, the fact that it flows as effectively as it does, I would really argue uh, is really the difference maker and the most important aspect of the game, of the way in which it flows and the ways in which it is satisfying to behold. So for that reason, this aspect of the game is pretty much among its most rewarding, but not the singular most rewarding. No, that honor and the best facet of Sid Meier's Pirates title goes to ship to ship battles. Yeah, they are they are very good. They are, to some extent, what I said about navigation also applies here. At least when it comes to the drawbacks, the water is still, the water is perhaps a little bit still unresponsive, but everything about the mechanical complexity of the of navigation is very much present here, and in an exacerbated, more immediate form. With the music itself also changing in such a way as to more effectively showcase the urgency and the drama of the situation that you find yourself with. Something that you have to something you have to delve with. Also, the mechanical responsiveness of the ship and how it is, and how you have to move it, how you have to respond to the strategy uh, of the opponent. It is all very interesting to delve into. Also, especially when you consider the fact that different ships are better suited for specific strategies. If you want to just hammer down and not just hammer at the opponent until until they give up, there is a ship that is optimal for that. If you want to just if you want to just we weave around if you want to just weave around and disarm, then go in for the kill, you can do that. If you have if you have some other kind of something else in mind, you can also do that. It is a very flexible and very engaging it is a very flexible and very engaging system. One that I find uh one that I find very satisfying to play and very interesting to interact with. Something that adds plenty of depth and plenty of variety to the actual gameplay, to the actual gameplay experience. And not to mention the presentation of it really helps sell its significance. It is for that reason the best facet of Sid Meier's Pirates. And yeah, that was it. That was me talking about every facet of Sid Meier's Pirates, or okay, not every facet, but but the major ones that I could really effectively delineate. I hope you've enjoyed seeing me talk about my favorite game of all time again. If that is indeed the case, well then I would ask you to like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the concept of the video itself or to my particular realization of it, well, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where you can hear me talking about the print medium and selected works therein. So if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check it out. Link in the description down below. Right past my down below. Down below. What was that? Down below. Right next to my social media, social media channels, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If, however, my thoughts on the print medium don't interest you, then I suggest you stay on this channel where, aside from the occasional video on video games, board games, or other kinds of games, I primarily talk about television and cinema, reviews, overviews, and pitches, and occasionally also stuff about philosophy, politics, or whatever comes to mind. So if any of that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check out my backlog. If none of what I said sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it from me. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.